The most trusted shotgun in American history became the worst purchase you could make. Not because the design failed, not because the engineering was flawed, because a private equity firm bought the company that made it, fired the people who cared, and kept the name on the box. And millions of people are still buying it, right now in 2026, because they remember what it used to be. They do not know what it became. I am talking about the Remington 870 Express. And before you close this video, before you tell me your grandfather's 870 ran for 40 years without a hiccup, understand something. Your grandfather's 870 and the 870 Express sitting on a gun store shelf today are not the same shotgun. They share a name. They share a silhouette. They do not share a standard. And the distance between those two guns is the distance between a company that built things to last and a holding company that built things to sell. That is the story I am going to tell you today. And by the end of it, you will understand exactly why the most iconic pump action ever made became the single worst shotgun purchase in America. Let us start with what the 870 used to be, because the fall means nothing if you do not understand the height. The Remington 870 Wingmaster entered production in 1950. Within a decade, it had become the standard by which every pump-action shotgun in the world was measured. The action was machined from a solid steel billet. The twin action bars prevented the binding and twisting that plagued single-bar designs. The fit and finish were so precise that owners described the pump stroke as feeling like running a hand across polished glass. Law enforcement agencies across the country adopted it. The United States Marine Corps built the M40 sniper system on the Remington 700 action, and the 870 became the standard-issue combat shotgun for military and police units alike. Over 11 million 870s have been sold worldwide. 11 million. That is not a product. That is an institution. Hunters carried them through decades of seasons and handed them down to their children. Cops trusted them in squad cars and breaching operations. Competitive shooters ran tens of thousands of rounds through them without replacing a single part. The Remington 870 Wingmaster was not just a good shotgun, it was the shotgun, the benchmark, the one you recommended when someone asked what to buy. And then Cerberus Capital Management showed up. In 2007, Cerberus Capital, a private equity firm with no firearms experience and no interest in firearms heritage, acquired Remington Arms and folded it into something called the Freedom Group, a conglomerate that eventually included DPMs, Bushmaster, Marlin, and several other legacy brands. The playbook was the same one private equity runs everywhere. Acquire a company with a legendary reputation. Leverage that reputation to maintain sales. Cut every cost that does not show up in the marketing photographs. And for a while it works, because customers are still buying the name. They are buying the memory of what the product used to be. They do not realize that the people who made the product what it was are gone. The tooling has been allowed to degrade, and the quality control department has been gutted because quality control does not show up on a quarterly earnings call. This is not speculation. This is documented across every major firearms forum, review site, and gunsmith shop in the country. The 870 Express, which became the high-volume, low-cost backbone of Remington's shotgun lineup, began shipping with problems that would have been unthinkable a decade earlier. The matte finish that Remington applied to the Express models was porous. It did not protect against corrosion. It invited it. Owners began reporting surface rust forming inside gun safes, in climate-controlled rooms, within days of purchase. Not after years of hard use. Not after being left in a duck blind during a rainstorm. In the safe, in the box, on the shelf at the dealer. Guns were arriving at gun shops with orange spots on the barrel before a customer ever touched them. But the rust was only the beginning. The chambers on Freedom Group era 870 Express models were left rough enough that spent shells would stick on extraction. You would fire, pump the action, and the shell would hang in the chamber, requiring manual intervention to clear. In a hunting context, that costs you a follow-up shot. In a defensive context, that can cost you your life. The forend on some models developed a lateral wobble that was not present in earlier production. Machining marks were visible on the receiver. Parts that had been machined steel for decades were replaced with metal injection molded components, which are cheaper to produce but more brittle under stress. The recoil pad quality declined. The wood furniture, on models that still offered it, showed fit and finish that one longtime Remington dealer described as embarrassing. And through all of it, the name on the receiver still said Remington. The price tag still reflected a premium brand. And customers, trusting that name the way their fathers and grandfathers had, kept buying. Quick pause here because I know this is hitting some of you where it hurts. If you own a Freedom Group Era 870 and it runs perfectly, I am genuinely glad. Some of them do. That is the honest caveat, and I will never pretend otherwise. But the fact that some of them work does not excuse the fact that an unacceptable number of them do not, and that the company responsible for the decline chose profit over the standard that earned the 870 its name. Here is where it gets worse. The problems with the Freedom Group 870 were not a secret. They were discussed endlessly on every forum. Gunsmiths talked about it, dealers talked about it, reviewers talked about it, and Remington's response was, by all documented accounts, dismissive. The company that built a 100-year reputation on craftsmanship responded to quality complaints the way a bureaucracy responds to a parking ticket. Slowly, defensively, and without urgency. The 870 was not the only casualty. The Remington 887 Nitro Mag, which was supposed to be the next generation of the 870 platform, shipped with an armor-locked polymer coating that was marketed as making the gun virtually rust-proof. In practice, the coating trapped moisture against the metal underneath, creating a greenhouse for corrosion that the owner could not see until it had already caused damage. The 887's action was stiffer, rougher, and less reliable than the gun it was supposed to replace. Not against you. Owners documented feeding failures, extraction issues, and rust forming under the polymer in places that could not be cleaned without damaging the coating itself. The gun that was engineered to never rust was rusting from the inside out, and Remington kept selling it. They kept running the advertisements. They kept trading on the name. Until they could not anymore. In 2020, Remington Arms filed for bankruptcy. The company was broken apart and sold in pieces. The firearms division was acquired by a group called Rem Arms, which moved production from the historic Ilion, New York factory, a facility that had been making guns since 1816, to a new facility in LaGrange, Georgia. The Ilion factory, nearly 200 years of American manufacturing history, closed its doors in March of 2024. Not downsized, closed. 2 centuries of institutional knowledge, gone. Now, to their credit, Rem Arms has reportedly made improvements to the current production, 870. The new Fieldmaster and Wingmaster lines are, by most early accounts, better than the darkest Freedom Group era guns. But better than terrible is not the same as good, and the shadow of what happened between 2007 and 2020 still hangs over every 870 that leaves the factory. More importantly, the used market is flooded with Freedom Group era 870 Express shotguns. They are in every pawn shop, every gun show, every online listing, and the people buying them do not know the difference between a 1995 Wingmaster and a 2015 Express. They see Remington 870 on the receiver and they think they are buying the legend. They are not. They are buying the corpse of the legend, dressed up and propped in the corner. And this is why it is the worst shotgun purchase you can make in 2026. Not because the design is bad. The design is brilliant. The Remington 870 Action, when built to spec, is one of the finest pump action mechanisms ever engineered. But a great design built to a low standard is worse than a mediocre design built to a high one, because the great design carries expectations that the low standard cannot meet. When your 870 Express rusts in the safe, you do not blame the finish, you blame yourself. When the shell sticks in the chamber, you do not blame the machining, you blame the ammunition. The Remington name provides cover for every failure because the customer cannot believe that Remington would ship a bad gun. And that trust, that century of earned credibility, is exactly what the Freedom Group exploited. So what do you buy instead? If you want a pump-action shotgun that will never let you down, the answer has been sitting on the shelf this entire time. The Mossberg 500 has been in continuous production since 1961. 12 million sold. The 590A1 is the only pump-action shotgun to pass United States military mil-spec 3443 testing, which requires 3,000 consecutive rounds of full-power buckshot without a single malfunction. Dual extractors, ambidextrous tang safety, steel-to-steel lockup, and an anti-jam elevator. If you want the Mossberg action at the absolute lowest possible price, the Maverick 88 gives you the same internals for around $200. Same action bars, same reliability, same company standing behind it. For $200, you get a pump-action shotgun that runs every single time you rack it. No break-in, no special ammunition, no rust in the safe, no calling customer service and hoping someone answers. It just works. And if you want a semi-automatic, the Beretta 1301 and the Benelli M4 have set the standard for combat and defensive shotguns for decades. They cost more, they are worth more, because the company that made them will still be making them and supporting them long after the next private equity firm has found its next victim. And here is the principle that ties this entire story together. The worst shotgun ever made is not the worst because of its design. It is the worst because of what was done to its design by people who did not respect it. The Remington 870 Express is a monument to what happens when a brand becomes more valuable than the product behind it. When the name on the receiver is worth more than the steel inside it, the customer pays the difference in rust, in stuck shells, in a pump action that does not pump when it matters most. The lesson is simple. Do not buy a name, buy a standard. A name can be sold. A name can be hollowed out. A name can be printed on a receiver by a company that has never machined a barrel in its life. A standard cannot be faked. It either cycles or it does not. It either rusts or it does not. It either passes 3,000 rounds of buckshot or it jams on round 47. The brands that last are the brands that build like their name depends on every single gun that leaves the factory. Because it does. Now you know which ones those are. And if you own an 870, old or new, I want to hear your story. Tell me in the comments whether yours is the legend or the letdown. Those stories are how we keep each other honest.